Welcome to The Explainer. So glad you're here today because, wow, we have an absolutely fascinating and incredibly high-stakes topic to unpack. We're looking at the live updates from the U.S.-Israel-Iran war. But you know what? We're going to look right past those daily military headlines to reveal what's truly at the center of this crisis, and that is a massive global economic standoff over energy. We're going to break down exactly how a conflict that's literally thousands of miles away is actively reshaping global supply chains right this very minute. Okay, let's dive into this. 1/5. That fraction right there represents the amount of the entire world's oil and natural gas trade that passes through a single, very narrow waterway during peacetime, the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, think about that. This isn't just some distant geopolitical squabble. Actually, scratch that, it's a massive bottleneck that directly impacts the cost of your morning commute, the price of goods on your local store shelves, and the overall stability of global markets. When this waterway chokes, trust me, the whole world feels it. So here's our quick roadmap for today. 1. Anatomy of a choke point. 2. The naval blockade battle. 3. A fragile armed ceasefire. 4. Global economic ripple effects. And 5. The long geopolitical stalemate. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Anatomy of a choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the reality that modern conflicts, they don't always require active combat to be completely devastating. Often, they do their damage simply through the control of vital global arteries. It's basically an economic chokehold. Iran has set up what Washington refers to as a toll booth system. They're essentially charging shipping firms for these safe passage escorts right through the strait. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. The U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control is warning that if shipping companies make these payments, whether they're using cash, digital assets, or even in-kind transfers, they expose themselves to severe U.S. sanctions. So global shipping companies are stuck in this impossible bind. Moving right along to Section 2, the naval blockade battle. Just look at this number, $4.8 billion. According to a Pentagon assessment, that is the estimated loss in Iranian oil revenue due to the U.S. naval blockade in the Gulf of Oman and the surrounding routes. It's a textbook example of asymmetric impact, right? By enforcing sanctions and basically curbing maritime trade linked to Iran's oil shipments, the U.S. is applying this massive financial squeeze. The goal is to weaken Tehran's economic stability and their funding capabilities, all without firing a single shot on Iranian soil. To really understand the tension out there on the water, consider the story of the Sarv Shakti. This is an India-linked, Marshall Islands-flagged supertanker, and it was carrying 45,000 tons of liquefied petroleum gas. Recently, it attempted this incredibly rare and highly tense transit, moving north through the waterway, passing right by Iran's Larak and Keshim Islands. I mean, every single transit like this is literally a high-wire act, and it perfectly illustrates the immense, tangible pressure on regional energy flows right now. So you might be wondering, how do we get out of this? Well, here is the core diplomatic standoff. Iran has floated an offer, reportedly through mediators in Pakistan, saying they'll ease their blockade on the Strait of Hormuz if the U.S. reciprocates by lifting restrictions on Iranian ports. The U.S. stance, though, highly, highly skeptical. The Trump administration openly questioned the intent, credibility, and authority of this proposal, so they're maintaining their blockade. There's just this deep, systemic mistrust between these two nations that prevents any immediate easing of this high-stakes squeeze. Which brings us to Section 3, a fragile, armed ceasefire. You know, this quote captures the highly charged U.S. political and military posturing perfectly. U.S. President Donald Trump recently remarked during a speech in Florida that the U.S. Navy could basically take on Cuba on its way back from Iran, suggesting a U.S. aircraft carrier like the USS Abraham Lincoln could just pull up 100 yards offshore and force a surrender. Trump has also firmly defended his administration's military campaign, claiming U.S. forces, including B-2 bombers, have completely decimated Iran's military infrastructure and halted their nuclear ambitions. He's even gone so far as to call critics of the campaign treasonous. And this brilliantly illustrates the other side of that coin. In stark contrast to the U.S. claims of a decimated Iranian military, Iranian commander Mohammad Jafar Assadi firmly stated that their armed forces are fully prepared for any new conflict. He warned that Washington just doesn't adhere to agreements, and noted that military assessments suggest tensions could escalate regardless of what the U.S. does. So we're looking at a true, immovable standoff. And just to add a little more fuel to this already volatile mix, the U.S. State Department bypassed congressional review to approve $8.6 billion in emergency arms sales to Middle Eastern allies. We're talking nearly $1 billion for Israel for precision weapons, over $4 billion for Qatar's Patriot missile defense, $2.5 billion for Kuwait's battle command system, and over $140 million for the UAE. So despite a 3-week ceasefire, the U.S. is rapidly reinforcing its allies with some incredibly advanced weaponry, which, as you can imagine, severely complicates the delicate balance of regional diplomacy. Let's look at the bigger picture in Section 4, Global Economic Ripple Effects. So, the crucial point is this. The collateral damage is literally everywhere. In global energy, crude oil has stabilized above a painful $110 per barrel. For humanitarian aid, the UN is reporting an 18% rise in costs just to deliver basic supplies to refugees, all because of soaring freight rates. In European tourism, the uncertainty and rising fuel prices are actually threatening the peak summer season in places as far away as Croatia. And over in global finance, JP Morgan is warning that this exact conflict could trigger massive oil shocks and sticky inflation worldwide. It really hits home. Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the long geopolitical stalemate. So put all this together, and it paints a picture of a region completely on edge. Mediators like Qatar are actively warning that we might be looking at a long-term frozen conflict, punctuated by intermittent flare-ups. We're also seeing some unprecedented shifting alliances. For example, Israel recently rushed its advanced Iron Beam laser defense system over to the UAE to help them counter Iranian drone attacks. And underlying all of this, deep, unresolved tensions still persist over Iran's nuclear program. Honestly, nobody is expecting a quick fix here. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought. Can a global economy actually survive a permanent stalemate in its most vital energy corridor? As our supply chains strain and inflation looms over us, this is the question every global leader and, frankly, every single consumer needs to be asking right now. Thank you so much for joining me for this focused explainer. Stay curious, and I'll catch you next time as we continue to break down the complex forces shaping our world.